I've performed over 2,000 open heart surgeries, 2,000, and I can tell you exactly what kills people after 60. It's not what they ate at McDonald's, it's what they ate thinking it was healthy. The low-fat yogurt, the whole grain crackers, the glass of orange juice every single morning, the diet soda instead of the bad regular one. These are the choices people feel good about, and these are the exact things I see clogging arteries on my operating table. Not burger grease, not bacon, the foods with heart-healthy labels on the front. Today I'm going to name them all, 10 categories, and by the end of this video you will never look at your grocery cart the same way again. Let me take you back to the 1970s for a moment. That's when everything changed, and not in a good way. A researcher published a study claiming dietary fat was the main driver of heart disease. It spread through medicine like wildfire. Governments rewrote nutrition guidelines overnight. The food industry pivoted overnight. Suddenly, fat was the villain, and low-fat everything was presented as the answer to heart disease. So Americans cut the butter, switched to margarine, replaced eggs with cereal, bought products stamped low-fat, heart-healthy, doctor-approved, and heart disease kept killing people, kept being the number one cause of death decade after decade. Something was wrong with the theory. Here's what the science actually shows. Now, the real damage to your heart doesn't start with fat. It starts with inflammation, specifically inside your arteries. Chronic low-grade inflammation inside the walls of your arteries. That's the real enemy, and it builds silently for years before anyone notices. Think of your arteries like a garden hose. When they're healthy, they're smooth, flexible, elastic, blood flows through easily with no resistance. But when inflammation sets in, and it does this quietly for years, the inner lining starts to crack. The body tries to patch those cracks with plaque. That plaque builds up, hardens, narrows. The channel restricts blood flow, and one day on my table, that hose finally gives out completely. So what triggers that inflammation? Not saturated fat from a grass-fed steak, not the cholesterol in your morning eggs. The research is increasingly clear on this. The main drivers are ultra-processed foods, refined carbohydrates, and hidden sugar. They spike insulin. They flood your bloodstream with inflammatory markers. They damage the endothelium, that's the delicate inner lining of your arteries, faster than almost anything else you can eat. After 60, your arteries have already been through a lot. They're less forgiving than they were at 40. The margin for error gets smaller every single year. That's why what you eat now matters more than it ever did before. So let's talk about what's actually on your plate, starting with the biggest surprises. Let's start with something sitting in almost every refrigerator in America right now, flavored yogurt. It's marketed as a health food, probiotics, calcium, light, low fat. The packaging shows fresh berries and a smiling woman in athletic wear. You've probably been eating it for years, feeling genuinely good about that choice. Here's the problem. When manufacturers remove fat from yogurt, it tastes terrible. So they compensate by adding sugar, a significant amount of it. A single container of flavored low-fat yogurt can contain up to 25, sometimes 30 grams of added sugar. That's roughly the same as a candy bar. And here's why that matters specifically after 60. Your insulin sensitivity drops with age. Your pancreas doesn't respond as quickly as it used to when you were younger. So when you eat that yogurt for breakfast, your blood sugar spikes fast and stays elevated far longer than it would in a 40-year-old eating the same thing. That repeated daily spike is one of the most consistent predictors of arterial damage that I know of. It's not dramatic, it's just relentless. The same logic applies to instant oatmeal. With flavoring, play notes, excellent food. I recommend them, but the apple cinnamon packet from the supermarket shelf is a different story. Check the label. Many brands contain 12 to 15 grams of sugar per serving. Plus, the oats are so heavily processed, they digest almost as fast as white bread. Your body barely notices the difference between that healthy breakfast and a bowl of sugar. Does that mean you can never eat yogurt or oatmeal? Absolutely not. Just choose plain Greek yogurt and add your own fresh berries. Cook still-cut oats instead of the instant flavored version. Two simple swaps, completely different impact on your arteries. Now this one genuinely surprises people because whole grain bread and crackers sound like exactly what a doctor would recommend. And in theory, whole grains are beneficial. Fiber, minerals, slower digestion, those are all real benefits. The problem is what happens to those grains by the time they reach the supermarket shelf in a packaged form. Pick up almost any whole grain bread or cracker and flip it over. Look past the word whole wheat in the ingredients. Look for what comes right after it. Sugar, high fructose corn syrup, and then vegetable oils, soybean oil, sunflower oil, canola oil. These are industrial seed oils processed at very high heat, and they do something very specific and damaging to your cardiovascular system. They throw off your omega-6 to omega-3 ratio in a serious way. In a healthy body, that ratio should be roughly 4:1, and the average American eating processed foods regularly is closer to 22:1. Some studies suggest even higher. Why does that ratio matter? Because omega-6 fatty acids in excess are pro-inflammatory. They signal your immune system to stay on permanent high alert, and a cardiovascular system that is constantly inflamed is a cardiovascular system that is aging significantly faster than it should be. I've seen patients with textbook healthy diets, whole grain everything. Very little red meat showing arterial inflammation markers of someone 20 years older. When we looked closely at what they were actually eating every day, it was these products: whole grain bread, whole grain crackers, seed oil-based spreads every single day. The same goes for many breakfast cereals marketed as healthy, even the brand-based ones that seem responsible. Some contain more sugar per serving than a glazed donut, and the vitamins sprayed on after processing, they don't undo the damage that the sugar and industrial oils are causing day after day. My simple rule: read the label. If the ingredient list has more than 5 items, or if you can't pronounce 3 of them, put it back on the shelf. I want you to think about something very specific for a moment. What do you actually drink in the morning? For millions of people over 60, it's a glass of orange juice, maybe apple juice, maybe a diet soda later in the afternoon. And I need to tell you, all 3 of these are doing measurable damage to your cardiovascular system. Let's start with fruit juice, even 100% natural, no sugar added, freshly squeezed straight from the orange. Sounds perfect, right? Here's what happens when you remove the fruit from the fiber. Juice is essentially fruit with the fiber completely stripped away, and fiber is the entire point of eating fruit. Fiber slows digestion. It controls how fast sugar enters your bloodstream. Without it, the sugar from 3 or 4 oranges hits your blood all at once. An immediate flood. Your insulin spikes hard, your liver gets overloaded, and that cycle repeated every morning for years quietly and steadily builds insulin resistance. Insulin resistance is massively underdiagnosed in people over 60, and it is a direct, well-documented driver of arterial inflammation, high blood pressure, and ultimately, heart attack risk. Eat the orange, don't drink it. It's a simple rule, but the difference it makes to your arteries over time is genuinely significant. Now, diet soda. I know exactly what you're thinking. No sugar, no calories. What's the harm? And it's a completely fair question. The harm is less obvious than with juice. Artificial sweeteners like aspartame and saccharine don't raise blood sugar directly. That part is true, but the story doesn't end there. Multiple large studies, including data published through the American Heart Association, have linked regular diet soda consumption to significantly elevated stroke risk and cardiovascular disease. The proposed mechanism involves gut microbiome disruption and changes in how the brain signals hunger and insulin response, a cascade that ultimately raises cardiovascular risk. After 60, your gut microbiome is already more vulnerable to disruption than it was 20 years ago. Adding daily doses of artificial sweeteners is genuinely not a neutral act. The research is clear enough that I tell every single one of my patients the same thing. Sparkling water with a slice of lemon is not a compromise. It is a straight upgrade. Your arteries will know the difference within weeks of making that switch. That's not an exaggeration. That is what the inflammatory marker data shows. That's liquid sugar covered. Now let's move to the next category, and this one has a particularly painful history in American medicine. I'm talking about margarine. For decades, literally decades, margarine was sold as the heart-healthy alternative to butter. Cardiologists recommended it. Government guidelines endorsed it. Entire generations switched over, genuinely, sincerely trying to do the right thing for their hearts, following doctors' orders, doing everything right, and they were unknowingly harmed. The problem was trans fats, hydrogenated vegetable oils that turned out to be extraordinarily damaging to cardiovascular health. By the early 2000s, the evidence was undeniable. Trans fats were banned or severely restricted in most countries, a genuine win for public health. But then manufacturers had to reformulate their products. They replaced hydrogenated oils with interesterified fats, a different kind of chemically modified oil. And here's the uncomfortable truth about that decision. The research on interesterified fats is still catching up. We simply don't have 50 years of population data yet. Early studies raise real concerns about insulin function and LDL particle size. My position as a surgeon is straightforward. I would rather trust a fat that humans have been eating for thousands of years than one invented in a laboratory 40 years ago. Quality butter from grass-fed cows, extra virgin olive oil. These have robust long-term cardiovascular evidence behind them. Margarine and vegetable spreads simply do not have that track record. The same concern applies to microwave popcorn and packaged snack foods. Many still contain partially modified oils and seed oils heated to high temperatures during the manufacturing process. The combination modified fats plus high heat plus industrial additives is not something your arterial walls handle gracefully after 60 years of hard work. There are better options. A handful of real walnuts, a drizzle of extra virgin olive oil over roasted vegetables. These are not complicated substitutions. They're just better engineering for a heart that's been working for 6 decades. Now here's a category that I think deserves far more attention than it currently gets: frozen meals and meal replacement products. And I understand exactly why they're appealing. You're busy, you're tired. Maybe you live alone and cooking a full meal every single night feels like too much. These products promise convenience and nutrition together in one box. The packaging lists vitamins, protein, fiber. It looks responsible. It looks like the kind of thing a health-conscious person would choose. That's exactly what the marketing is designed to make you feel. But flip that box over and look at the actual ingredient list. You'll find maltodextrin, a highly processed starch that raises blood sugar faster than regular table sugar. You'll find corn syrup solids, sodium, in amounts that would make any cardiologist use, and a list of preservatives and stabilizers that your great-grandmother would not recognize as food. Here's what concerns me most as a surgeon. These compounds don't just spike blood sugar once. They create a cumulative inflammatory load that builds day after day, meal after meal. Study after study now links ultra-processed food consumption measured in servings per day with accelerated cardiovascular aging. The data on this is strong and consistent. One major European cohort study found that each additional daily serving of ultra-processed food was associated with a 12% increase in cardiovascular disease risk. After 60, your body's repair mechanisms are slower than they were before. The damage accumulates faster than it clears. This is biology, not blame. Eating these products regularly isn't a neutral act of convenience. It is a slow, steady drip of arterial stress happening every single day inside your blood vessels. This next one is personal for me as a physician because I watched this unfold in real time in medical offices, in grocery stores, across an entire generation. The low-fat movement of the 1980s and 90s was one of the most successful and one of the most damaging marketing campaigns in food industry history. Products flew off shelves: low-fat cookies, low-fat salad dressing, low-fat everything. People genuinely believed they were protecting their hearts. They were following the best advice available at the time. What actually happened inside those packages? Fat was removed, and to maintain taste and texture, manufacturers replaced it with sugar, refined starch, and corn syrup every single time. Low-fat frozen dinners, low-fat peanut butter with added sugar to compensate for the removed oil. low-fat granola bars with more sweetener than a regular candy bar. The research that followed was damning. Replacing dietary fat with refined carbohydrates and added sugar turned out to be a direct predictor of cardiovascular mortality. Not a correlation, a predictor. The very people following this advice most faithfully, buying every low-fat product, reading every label, looking for the low-fat claim, were in some cases actively increasing their risk. Let me be very direct with you about this. Fat does not make you fat. Fat does not clog your arteries. These are myths that need to be retired permanently. The type of fat and the overall inflammatory load of your entire diet, those are what matter. That is where the science actually points in 2025. A full-fat plain yogurt with no added sugar is categorically better for your heart than a low-fat yogurt loaded with artificial sweeteners and corn syrup. Every time without exception, if you see low fat on a label, that is your signal to immediately read the rest of that label very carefully. 9 times out of 10, something worse has been put in this place. I've spent most of this video telling you what not to eat, so let me spend a few important minutes on what your arteries actually love, because this part matters just as much. Eggs. For decades they were villainized over cholesterol. Entire generations avoided them based on guidelines that have since been substantially revised. The research has largely cleared eggs. For most people, dietary cholesterol has minimal impact on blood cholesterol levels. Eggs provide high-quality protein, choline for brain health, and nutrients that support vascular function. 2 eggs in the morning is not a cardiovascular risk. It is a genuinely good breakfast backed by current evidence and consumed in healthy populations around the world. Fatty fish, salmon, mackerel, sardines, 2 to 3 servings per week. This is one of the most powerful food-based interventions. I know of for cardiovascular health. The omega-3 fatty acids in these fish actively reduce inflammation, not passively, actively. They lower triglycerides, improve arterial flexibility, and reduce clotting risk simultaneously. I consider fatty fish one of the most powerful cardiovascular tools available to you without a prescription. 2 to 3 servings a week. That's the target. Leafy greens, spinach, kale, arugula, rich in nitrates that your body converts to nitric oxide, which is a natural pressure relief valve for your cardiovascular system. Nitric oxide relaxes and dilates blood vessels. It reduces resistance. It lowers blood pressure naturally. Leafy greens are one of the fastest dietary ways to support this system. Berries, blueberries especially, packed with polyphenols that directly protect the endothelium, that inner lining of your arteries I mentioned earlier. Multiple studies confirm this effect. Regular berry consumption measurably reduces markers of arterial inflammation within weeks, not months, weeks. This is well documented in the research literature on cardiovascular nutrition and olive oil extra virgin coldress, the cornerstone of the Mediterranean diet, which has some of the strongest cardiovascular evidence in the entire history of nutritional science. Use it generously on vegetables, on salads, for cooking at moderate temperatures. It is not the enemy. It never was. The evidence for its cardiovascular benefits is genuinely robust. None of this is exotic. None of it requires a special health food store. It's just real food, the kind your grandparents would have recognized without reading the back of a package. I want to stop for a moment and say something that I think is genuinely important, something that doesn't get said enough in these kinds of medical conversations. You are not to blame for any of this. You followed the advice you were given. By your doctor, by the government, by the labels on the packages. You bought the low-fat products. You drank the juice. You chose the whole grain option because that's what the guidelines told you to do for decades. And those guidelines were wrong. Not slightly off, fundamentally, demonstrably wrong. For 50 years, the nutritional establishment pointed you directly at the wrong enemy. That is not your failure. That is a systemic failure. But here's what genuinely shocks me every single time, as a surgeon who has seen thousands of living hearts up close on an operating table. The human cardiovascular system is extraordinarily resilient. Even after decades of receiving the wrong inputs, it responds to the right ones faster than almost any other organ system in the body. I have patients in their late 60s and early 70s who made significant dietary changes and saw measurable improvements in inflammatory markers, blood pressure, and arterial flexibility within weeks, not years, weeks. The body wants to heal. It is designed to heal. It just needs you to stop working directly against it with every meal. So here's your concrete action plan. 3 steps. You can start on all 3 of them today, right after this video ends. Step 1. Read every label. Not the front of the package with his health claims, the back, the actual ingredient list. Specifically, look for added sugar in any form, industrial seed oils like soybean, corn, or sunflower, more than 5 total ingredients, and anything you genuinely cannot pronounce. If you find 2 or more of those warning signs in a single product, put it back on the shelf. That's the rule. Simple and effective. Step 2. Take the 30-day challenge. Pick one ultra-processed product you eat regularly. Just one. Remove it completely from your diet for 30 days straight. Replace it with a whole food equivalent. One swap, that's all. Research consistently shows that even a single dietary substitution produces measurable changes in blood markers within a month. You will feel the difference before your next routine checkup even confirms it in the numbers. Your body will tell you. Step 3. Stop fearing real food. Butter, eggs, olive oil, fatty fish, full-fat plain dairy. These are not your enemies. They have never been your enemies. The fear of natural fat is a 50-year-old marketing story, not a medical fact. Your arteries know the difference between grass-fed butter and a chemically modified vegetable spread. Even when the calorie counts look similar on paper, the inflammatory response inside your body is completely different. That distinction is what matters most. The operating table is where I fix the damage after it's already happened. But what happens in your kitchen every single day, that's where you prevent it from coming back. You have more direct control over the health of your heart through your daily food choices than through any medication I can prescribe. That is not an overstatement. I've seen it happen at 65. I've seen it happen at 72. The body does not care how old you are. It responds to what you consistently give it. Let's bring it all home. A quick summary of everything we covered today. 10 categories of foods that are quietly damaging your arteries while wearing a healthy label. Flavored low-fat yogurt with hidden sugar. Instant oatmeal packets. Whole grain bread and crackers loaded with seed oils. Breakfast cereals that spike blood sugar like candy. That's the first 4. Microwave popcorn and packaged snacks with chemically modified fats. 100% fruit juice with no fiber. Diet sodas with artificial sweeteners. Margarine and vegetable spreads. That's for more. Low-fat processed products where fat was simply replaced with sugar and starch. And frozen convenience meals packed with maltodextrin, sodium, and preservatives. 10 categories, all marketed as healthy choices. Every single one of them doing quiet cumulative damage to the arteries you depend on every minute of every day. But this is not a story about fear. This is a story about information. Because the moment you know what's actually happening inside your body, you have power, real, practical, immediate power over the health of your heart. Start with one change, just one. The rest will follow. Small shifts repeated consistently. That is how arteries heal. That is what the data shows and what I see in my patients. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these 10 categories surprise you the most? Drop your answer in the comments below. I genuinely read them and your answer might actually shape the topic of the next video. So leave a comment. It matters more than you might think. If this information was useful to you today, please share it with someone you care about. A spouse, a sibling, a friend who has been buying the low-fat everything faithful. They need to see this too. Hit that. Changed how you'll look at food labels going. 4. So you don't miss what's coming next. And before you go, a note about what I've shared today. Everything in this video is general educational information based on current cardiovascular research and my clinical experience. Your individual situation is unique. Your history, your medications, your existing conditions all matter. Before making any significant dietary changes, please talk to your own physician. I'm Dr. Alwin Adewale. Take care of your heart. It's been working for you every second of your